What's up, guys? It's FREEDO here for Your Overwatch. Today, we actually have an interview with a fellow YouTuber, mykL, who covers all of the Overwatch esports news. If you want to check him out, his link is in the description. And just some quick context so that we're all on the same page of how the playoffs in Overwatch League works. All the matches in the playoffs have 3 best-of-5 series. So you play 5 maps up to 3 times, and whoever wins 2 ends up going through. There also is a little bit of an added complexity to this, where who plays who isn't based on the bracket, but on the seeding. So because NYXL won first seed, they always get to play whoever the lowest seed is available, which makes things kind of easy for us because the first playoff game, Fusion versus Boston, is the 6th seed playing the 3 seed. And once you see that match, you'll know who gets to play NYXL. If Fusion win as the 6th seed, they automatically go up, and if Boston win, they automatically go down to the Valiant, and then vice versa for the other match, obviously. Kicking it off in the analysis, we jump right into discussing Boston versus the Fusion, who, as mykL points out, has a bit of a problem with the way the map pool got drafted, as the semi-random selection of maps didn't really favor their history in the past.
On Twitter, they did post that they know these were some of their worst maps, so they acknowledged it, but I think with the time given, they should be able to perform better on them. The question is, though, how good? Because Boston Uprising are actually really good at some of these maps. Take a look at like Volskaya. They were 10-1, which that one is a draw, not even a loss. So I can't see them really dropping that map. As for the other ones, they were also pretty good at. We look at Oasis. That was the 5th map in a lot of the stages. And Boston Uprising in the 3rd stage never lost the 5th map, and they went to it like 6 times. So, you know, map-wise, Boston Uprising definitely have an advantage here. What do you think?
Well, what I would ask is, what is the difference of the meta going to play into everything? Because, as we know, in Stage 3, even though they did go undefeated, a lot of those games were extremely close, and a big percentage, maybe even way more than his due, was put onto the shoulders of Striker playing Tracer, and as we've seen in Stage 4, they can't do that at all, because if we watch especially like their Volskaya game, for example, no matter who they put in that Widow slot, it seemed to not even matter, either whether it was Dream back in the day or Mistakes now. Striker is so good at making space with Gamsu that they could always pull the attention of the defense to open up Widow lanes so that Mistakes didn't really have to be that good of a Widow, but at least in the double sniper meta as it is now, you don't really have that flanking presence to open up lanes for him, and we've seen what happened to him in Stage 4 when he had to just go head-to-head all the time. And that's why I really put, I guess, a grain of salt on some of their previous records, because I'm really worried that pound for pound, their firepower can't compete with Philly, which is what they're bringing to the table, whereas they don't look good historically on the maps, but I'm going to side with Philly because I think their overall DPS performance is kind of going to overwhelm Mistakes and Striker, unless Striker keeps evolving on Widow. But how do you keep up with Carpe? I mean, he's an MVP candidate.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. My thing is, though, I think Striker could potentially keep up with them, and Boston Uprising is always like a slow-to-start team when it looks like different metas are coming into play. We've had, a month now of just off time, and I do think that could factor into this. Like in Stage 4, they had, a really bumpy performance. But if you look back at like Stages 2, they didn't have all that great of a performance at the very beginning. But after they got to like Week 4, Week 5, that's actually when they started their big tear and they went on that 13-14 win streak. So I think they possibly, with this time, will be able to be a lot better than they were in Stage 4, figure out that meta game. There's also some other changes, and we honestly really don't know what to expect exactly going into the meta. I think it's going to be really exciting. And because of that, I'm willing to side with Boston here.
Interesting. The one wrench that I think I'm going to leave as my wild card on this is that they lost Coach Krusty, who of course went to Shock, who's not even in the conversation right now. But I wonder what percentage of their ability to adapt and evolve their team came down to him to really turn things around. Now, obviously, Boston, in any case, was kind of slow to adapt in any meta, but we'll just have to see if that was more of a thing that they commanded with Krusty at their side, looking over and fixing all the things they're doing wrong, perfecting their dive especially, or if that's something that the rest of the organization can do. I put a ton of value in coaches personally. I think that's a huge thing, and if Boston is going to win, I think it makes the most sense that their coaching staff is where things will pick things up. However, Fusion has been up and down with that as well. They've at times, especially in stage 2, looked like a very disciplined team, and they've just gone up and down since then, unfortunately. But with enough preparation, I don't think they're necessarily going to be weak in that regard either. And if they combine both of the things that I think they'll be strong at, both the firepower and maybe adapting to the meta a bit better than Boston, I think they'll take it. So we'll have to see how that one works out.
Yeah, I definitely do agree with your coaching there. I think that Boston Uprising, though, overall, I think it's kind of been Cuck's team the entire season. Yeah, Krusty probably was a big part of the team, and he is a great coach. We've seen that. What he's done for San Francisco Shock is crazy. But I think it really has been Huck's team. If you just watch things behind the scenes, how he's kind of always been in control. He's always been the guy at the headset. I think in stage 2, there was a time where we've seen behind the scenes footage, and he was the guy on the mic in the back telling them what to do, what the differences were between maps, and I do feel like he has always been the integral part of the team when it comes to coaching. Yeah, we'll just have to see, man. I think this is going to be a very good matchup.
It could be a huge mistake to doubt Boston. People did it all season, and I may be falling victim to that again. But moving on to probably the more interesting match out of all of these, because you have a team, London, who looked like they could easily contest for number 1, then had some roster shuffles, the main storyline being Fissure going, of course, to Gladiators, who, correct me if I'm wrong, Gladiators has always beat London with Fissure on the roster, right?
Yeah, they even won before they had him as well. They've never lost to the LA Gladiators.
Right. So what's your prediction going to be for this matchup?
So I was a person that was super high on the London Spitfire early on. And after they collapsed, I always thought they were going to, come back together. After stage 2, all right, they'll do it in stage 3. Oh, well, they're going to do it in stage 4. And then they just never did it, Birdring, yeah, he sometimes looked like he was back, but he never really was. And to this point, I've kind of really lost a lot of faith in them. And since the LA Gladiators overall are 4-0 against the London Spitfire, I don't see why it's going to change here. I really don't.
Do you know anything about the map history, perhaps? I don't actually have those numbers. I didn't look those up.
Map-wise here, London Spitfire, they struggle a little bit. There is Lijiang Tower for the LA Gladiators, who are sitting at 11-1 overall in that. So they do have a big advantage there. But there's really nothing here that London Spitfire is horrible at. I'd say like the Philadelphia Fusion. But there's a lot of maps where they're maybe 40, 50%. And LA Gladiators are sitting around like 60, 70% on a lot of these maps. So
yeah, it's quite rough. Kicking it off first with Junkertown, the map that I believe in preseason they upset them even way back then, and then going on to Lijiang, and London doesn't really have the best Faro player, and you let Hydration in the air. That's one of his strongest picks. Yeah. The only worry I have is that Gladiators oftentimes play like a teamwork tank playmaking style, and that can kind of fall apart if DPS pop off, because they're a little bit more niche than I think I'd like them to be. I love seeing Hydration pull out the Doomfist or something, right? I just cheer and sit on the edge of my seat. It's great to watch, but I think they're a little bit too reliant on that play, and I don't know where I rate his Hanzo right now. I haven't seen it, especially not the new one, and word on the street is at least Birdring's Hanzo is legit, and if that's the case, if you've watched a lot of contenders, I've been reviewing it recently, Hanzo can just go off on a flank and kill 3 people. Do you know what I mean? Like, it almost doesn't matter the plays that your tanks make if Hanzo's hitting shots. And I'm a little bit of afraid that if Birdring reaches peak performance, or maybe even Prophet, but I'm pretty sure Birdring said he's going to be playing it, and just kills 3 people with Storm Arrow over and over again, they could be right into this battle. But I too, just like you, I think I'm going to be leaning towards the tried and true win streak of the Gladiators to overcome this one, and Fissure again to make some big plays.
Yeah, I agree. And again, I just think it's really scary for the London Spitfire, especially after LA Gladiators did add Fissure. It's like he just has them to the T. He knows what they're going to do. Gesture in the matches against LA Gladiators has just looked awful. He gets focused so hard, always getting taken down. So that's something London Spitfire really needs to look at too. They want to adapt and beat these guys for once.
To be fair, though, in the playoffs of Stage 4, Gladiators lost that same exact way, where Fissure was trying a little bit to do too much and getting focused off to the side. And if that happens again, where he goes for that risk-reward playstyle and London punish it, that could be their opening, along with maybe Birdring popping off. But so we're going to set up that, we're going to assume that they won this match, and we'll say that kind of dictates where we're going to branch off into the different permutations of what can happen down the schedule. We'll have to do this twice because me and you disagree on where we think the first game is going to go. So we'll start off saying that Boston wins. If Boston wins, they'll go up against the LA Valiant. And if Gladiators wins, then they'll go to play NYXL actually first. So do you want to start off with Gladiators versus NYXL, how that semi is going to go?
Yeah, let's go ahead and hop into that one. I feel like New York Excelsior, they're the big dogs. Everybody's hyping them up, right? But I think they're going to struggle in some matches. I don't think it's going to be super easy. You know, I think we're going to go to a series that goes to the third one, which if everybody doesn't know real quick, it's 5 maps, 3 different times until somebody wins twice. So it's going to be a long series. And if LA Gladiators come to play, I think they can pick up one of these series.
Yeah, we won't know the maps until the next week, I think, for that NY game. The only problem is when you check NYXL's maps, it's not even fair because they lose so few anyway that, most of the losses came in stage 4, like the majority of their map losses, I think, out of any stage, right? So the results for them are kind of skewed.
Yeah,
and
that's true.
It's tough for me to say. I think the problem I have with ever going against NYXL is that they just play so clean all the time, right? So disciplined. And the question is, was that lacking in stage 4, or were they running suboptimal strategies and trying to go on spider pine flanks, like on purpose? And I kind of lean that way, where they were trying to set themselves up in suboptimal situations, trying to win anyway, even in the stage finals, which sounds kind of crazy, but that's just what I believe. And I guess when we start to see them in the actual playoffs, this is the go big or go home moment where they're playing for upwards of $1 million.
I think it's $1 million for first place and a total of like 1.6 overall.
Right. So they played fast and loose in the stage 4 playoffs to risk for the big money. And that's where I want to see the NYXL perfection of their comps, where they're not trying to play risky stuff. And when you start to play that way, I think Fissure is going to look a lot weaker than he has in other matchups. And as well, the off tank for Gladiators hasn't really jumped off the screen for me. I think Void has played quite poor, actually, and Bishu, at least on the Diva, is a lot more stable. I think Void looks really uncomfortable on the stage so far. He was great, obviously, in Apex in the past. He was the best Diva in the world. But right now, he seems to not actually fit in with the way that the Gladiators are playing. And when you compare that up against mykL, who's just a god among men in the off-tank position, either number 1 or number 2 for probably most people, that front line is just going to dominate so much that I think that's going to suffocate them out of the series. Now, I think, if I heard you correctly, you think that Gladiators might take one of these 3 series and then lose overall, or what?
Yeah, I think they could definitely take a set. I'm not going to pick against New York Excelsior. If we look at the meta going into this one as well, New York Excelsior is sitting in a really good spot. They have Libero, historically one of the best Hanzas in the entire world, just extremely flexible DPS. And we don't even really have to talk about SBB or Pine on the Widowmaker. Whichever one is in there is going to do their job, right? So at the end of the day, I do think New York Excelsior will win, but I don't think it's going to be perfect for them in the playoffs. I think this is a time where other teams really are going to be able to rise up in big moments. And I think it'll be close and exciting. New York Excelsior, though, at the end of the day, of course.
It wouldn't be too difficult now to pivot the other direction and see if Fusion end up winning that Boston matchup. They'll go on to play NYXL. So all of that same stuff, could Philly have a better or worse chance against the New York Excelsior?
I think similar things apply here. I think Philly could have an opportunity to have a good run against them, but I do think the Gladiators would have a better chance going up against NY. The thing about Philly, which is interesting, I didn't really mention this earlier, I'm kind of intrigued to see what tank lineup they're going to run. Are they going to go with the Koreans that they were running all stage 4, where they had some really good success, I'd say, in the first 3 weeks or first 2, and then it just kind of like stale at the end? Are they going to go with Poco and Fraggy? I don't know. That's something I really want to know.
It's tough to say, right? Because when they actually beat NYXL, I think it was in stage 1, if I'm not mistaken. It was the one match they lost then.
It was stage 1.
It was like a under preparation moment where, honestly, Carpe and I think it was Shadowburn at the time as well, just made for so much chaos that NYXL, they couldn't keep up, and they lost in a map 5 on Lijiang. It was quite epic as well. So the skill is up there definitely for the Fusion, and it always has the potential to just overwhelm you and win fights. However, I think it's basically impossible to do that for 2 out of 3 series. Maybe for a one-off series you can see that, but I would say as well that I think Fusion would have a worse time against NYXL than Gladiators, because Gladiators at least are playing more akin to NYXL's meta control, if that makes sense. Like they understand the swaps, they understand the team play, they play that game a lot cleaner, and they're less reliant actually on big mechanical plays in order to bail them out. But either way, I think NYXL is just going to go through to the finals. It's pretty easy to say. So moving on to the other semifinal, we're going to pretty much feel like it's guaranteed that London's going to lose.
It'll be LA Valiant and Boston Uprising in my case, right? Yeah, so I think Boston Uprising against LA Valiant could have a chance. I think this is obviously going to be more of a close match than anybody going up against New York Excelsior. I don't know how exactly good the LA Valiant are. Yeah, they did win stage 4, right? But New York Excelsior, were they actually, trying their best? Of course they're trying, but you mentioned it earlier. We don't know exactly if that was them at their full potential. So that's kind of like a skewed prediction of how good LA Valiant could be. Boston Uprising coming into this match, I think they'll have some confidence. They'll understand the meta. They'll have the Hanzo down. They'll have the Widowmaker down. And I think they could possibly make a run for this. This is a tough one. This is like pretty hypothetical. I think the LA Valiant would be able to take it though, probably in that third series.
My opinion on this kind of gets me in trouble with the fans of both teams, because not only do I think NYXL wasn't playing their best strategies, but I also kind of think that LA Valiant was legit. And if NYXL brought their A game, that stage 4 finals would have been close. And I can't really say I know who would have won if they were playing their best. But LA Valiant, to me, looks like they're playing NYXL's playbook. And the amount of discipline they have, especially with their tank line. I don't know if it's just because I'm a tank player or what, but whenever I see Fate and Space, commanding Space, as redundant as it sounds, but in terms of their flexibility, for my money, the only guy that contests mykL for the best off-tank is Space. And on all of his tanks, really, I'm a big fan. And he just seems to pop off in both the timing of where he goes when, but also mechanically. And that is what's going to, for me, secure the finals run for LA Valiant. Really, whether they're going up against Boston, which I think honestly might crumble against that type of play, because also the X factor for LA Valiant is their DPS has been really rising to the occasion, and I can't really get on board with where the firepower from Boston Uprising has been recently. I don't think it's good enough. So you combine those things together, especially in 3 series, I think LA Valiant have it. Now, we went over the alternate universe for the other one as well. What is the other possibility, or is there more than one? Okay, so the other versions of how this could happen is that Fusion goes to play NYXL, and LA plays LA, or London plays there, which neither of us really think is possible, but we can quickly go over a miracle run if London does upset the Gladiators as well. So, Battle for LA again. Who do you think would win that one?
Battle for LA, man. Every time they play is super exciting, and it's honestly extremely unpredictable. One team gets the best of one team, and then the other time, the other team wins, right? I think it does come down to tank play. Fisher and Fate, in that match, I think they're battling for who can control the space the best, and I think whichever tank does, wins. You mentioned in the match earlier that the LA Valiant's DPS players, they've been playing great recently, and I do agree. I think that is the biggest reason they're playing so good. In previous stages, it was either just agilities or just Soon having a good game. When they both come together and play really well, I think it's a team that can beat the LA Gladiators.
Yeah, and it's quite impressive, really, because I think I saw this on Reddit somewhere, but it showed a graph of the map differential from stage to stage and how teams ended up getting where they are. So, for example, if you look at the graph of the London Spitfire, they started off really hot, and then they started losing, but somehow still made it into playoffs. Whereas the LA Valiant just sort of steadily increased over time and ended up being in second place all of a sudden. And a lot of people didn't see that coming. I for sure didn't. I have to be honest. I didn't see the turnaround of their DPS coming. And that, for me, is what's going to give them the edge in either matchup, really, whether they go up against London or the LA Gladiators. Because the thing is, the Gladiators plays the meta really well, and they can swap and everything. But it kind of doesn't matter if the Valiant plays that NYXL-esque style where they just don't make a lot of mistakes. If the enemy's making mistakes, then Gladiators are definitely going to punish that, right? Like, Fissure's going to find the opening and everything. Mm-hmm. But the problem is, whenever you see him play up against a really disciplined team, he sort of just forces things for me. I hate saying this about Fissure because I love the guy so much, but I think he tries to do too much, whereas Fate is like the exact opposite, where he only does what's reliable, and that creates a rock for the team that they always can play around really reliably. And I think the last question always comes down to me, who's playing Hanzo for the Gladiators? That's going to be really important. That Storm Arrow carries games, and I think Agility's Hanzo is probably where they're going to put it on, and he's probably going to be the best in either matchup. Perhaps Bird Ring turns things around for me, though, and maybe that changes things, but overall, I think it's frontline playing great, and whoever has the better Hanzo is where I'm usually leaning in these matchups.
Yeah, I could definitely agree with that. I will say, though, if London is able to get past the Gladiators somehow, I think they would have a better chance at actually beating the Valiant than the Gladiators would. I think the London Spitfire, if they can get things together and they're somehow that team that they were at the end of Stage 1, beginning of Stage 2, they really could make a run for the entire thing. But it's just unlikely that I think that's going to happen. That's why I'm not picking them.
That's a really good point, because we all think they have the potential,
Yeah.
right? Like, they have the mechanics that Gladiators kind of can't get. Like, I got to give credit to Surefour, man. Like, he's played such a clean Widowmaker in the second half of the season, but the other DPS performance always seems a little bit more game sense rather than mechanical based, whereas you just see Prophet and Birdring at times, at least, pop off and really hit those peaks that can take over a game, and that's kind of what you need. So I think we're both assuming it's going to end up being an NYXL Valiant head-to-head for the finals in New York, which I think I'm going to see you in Brooklyn, right?
Yeah, I am going to be there.
Be happy to see a lot of our fans there. Whenever we go to either LA or something, a lot of people come say hi, so don't be afraid to do that. But how is that matchup going to go? A rematch of Stage 4.
I think this is what it's pretty much all leading up to, right? LA Valiant, they're on their side of the bracket. New York Excelsior's on their side. Everybody's looking at it. These are the two strong teams. I think it's going to be crazy. I hope it's going to be crazy, at least. I would hate to see one team just, stomp out the other, have a better understanding of the meta, or just whatever it is. That would be really unfortunate. And I don't think we'll get that. I think it's going to be back and forth the entire time. Hopefully each team can win a series. I really don't even know what to think about this match. I want to hear your thoughts on it, because you're saying that New York Excelsior is New York Excelsior, then LA Valiant's like a little mini New York Excelsior, basing their plan off of them. So
yeah, that's the best way for me to describe it, really. They're NYXL light, basically. And that's where it comes down to. And I have to lean with the real deal. And I don't know if they necessarily are trying to emulate them. It's just sort of the feeling I get with their reserved, disciplined style of how they control the map and play a little bit slower, generally speaking. And when you're in that mirror match against NYXL, they feel very comfortable. And when you start to look to guys like Agilities, he's really young, up against a guy like Sabyolbi, who just pops off on stage. Like, we see it at the World Cup. I think we're going to see it at the next World Cup. I think we'll see it in the grand final. This guy shows up when it's important, and I just can't bet against him when that's the case. The Battle of the Frontlines is going to be so clean that I think the series will at least feel close, even if NYXL ends up edging out the maps. But especially when you get in some of these playmaking scenarios, I really think the NYXL playmakers, whether we haven't even mentioned Jonak yet, by the way. That's probably the first name we should have said. How dare we not mention the king himself? Jonak, ultimately. Between Jonak and Sabyolbi, I think the peak of performance is there to take over things. But I got to give credit to Custa and Kariv back there as well. They've played a great backline, and I can't doubt their ability to control the game. The whole team works great, but I just give the edge to NYXL barely. And I don't know if the series will be close map-wise, but I think the games will feel close enough for LA Valiant to be able to be in it enough. You know what I mean? To look like they have a chance, but I think it'll get snuffed out in the end.
Yeah, sounds like a situation for the Stage 3 finals where Boston was going up against New York. The maps were extremely close, but in the day, it was still 3-0, right? So I can see that happening. Looking at Jonak, Sabyolbi, they're so good, right? But I do feel like there's potential from the LA Valiant players, from like Soon, from Agilities, Kariv, to really have a standout match in a big atmosphere. We haven't really seen them in those environments. We saw it in the finals of Stage 4, but it's just one stage final, right? How clutch can they actually be? That's something I'm interested in. And I think if they can show up, they can make it close, and map-wise close. I'm talking, one series to one team, one series to the other team, and going all the way to the 5th map in the last series. Now that would be epic. That's something I want to see. Maybe I'm trying to dream it into reality, but I do feel like it definitely can happen.
Well, guys, that's everything for today's Overwatch League predictions. Are you excited for the playoffs? I certainly am. It kind of sucked to see so many Stage 4 games not really matter, but all that's over now. The stakes are real, the playoffs are here, and hey, like I said before, I have the opportunity to go to Brooklyn to watch the finals myself. If any of your Overwatch fans are out there, be sure to come say hi. We'll be posting on Twitter where we're at and available to meet, so be sure to hit us a follow on there. If you enjoyed the video as well, be sure to leave it a like. It really does help us out. That's been it for me. I've been FREEDO for Your Overwatch. I'll see you guys next time.